In the previous video I talked about Hotline Miami, Far Cry Blood Dragon, Trial of the Blood Dragon and a bit of GTA Vice City. These are the games that in my opinion helped shape the Outrun and Vaporwave aesthetics towards what they have become today. Essential visual genres for anything retro. However, in this video we are taking a look at the games that have been influenced by these styles. You guys had a lot of suggestions for games that I missed in the first video, so I've done my best to play all of them. Some of these games border into Cyberpunk territory, but you know what? I'm feeling generous, so I'll allow it. So I committed to one of the biggest sacrifices of my life. I sold some of my precious CSGO skins and bought all 7 of these games. Goodbye M4 Bulletstorm and P90 Asimov. We've had some great memories, but it's time to make new and aesthetic ones. As a man that's almost exclusively played stationary shooters, or what you would call them, you know, the CSGOs, Battlefields and the old Call of Duties, this game was quite a jump. The tutorial alone made me feel like that journalist that was stuck at the Cuphead tutorial for like 20 minutes. And I am not a natural when it comes to moving fast, running on walls and killing an endless amount of enemies. I would compare myself to, you know, Agent 47 in my playstyle. Make a plan, go in, kill everything you see, do it quiet, put the bodies in the trunk of a car and take them home. My number one problem in this game was understanding the rules. After getting out of the tutorial, which I'm still not 100% sure I actually completed, I was sent to level 1 or something. No objective is clear at all. There are things around the level, but no orange door in sight, so I just started blasting. After messing around in quick play for a few hours and getting nowhere, I started googling how to get to the orange door in Get to the Orange Door. No help online, unfortunately. However, I did learn that the game is a roguelike and I had accidentally gotten myself into some kind of free play or unfinished game mode. So then I went back, clicked on rogue mode and started racking up kills. It's a cool experience, running on walls, shooting and diving around, but it does, however, get a bit repetitive after a while. The most entertaining part of this game are the different weapons and how they feel. From the grenade launcher that lets you rocket jump into the air, to the extremely powerful revolver and some of the most satisfying shotguns I've ever tried. There are also a couple of weapons that do feel a bit weak, but I guess you gotta have some of those to make the others feel stronger. The enemies also become a bit repetitive after an hour. I feel like some cool ragdoll physics would probably help there. It should be mentioned that this game is still unfinished and in early access without an official release date, so there are a few bugs here and there. Aesthetically, it makes me think of a more modern Outrun aesthetic. It obviously takes a lot from games like Far Cry Blood Dragon with a taste of Superhot. The wireframe mountains, the cars and palm trees look great, but overall the levels feel a bit empty. I wouldn't mind more walls to run on or adding slightly different environments in the future to distinguish the levels a bit more. Overall a fun ride and something to come back to with new updates. 4 Testarosas out of 7. Just looking at the trailer for Katana Zero, it's undoubtable that this game has taken a big influence from Hotline Miami. Not only in the visual aesthetic, but also the game's structure and storytelling. The beats of the story almost mirror those of Hotline Miami, to the point of excess. One thing that differentiates Katana Zero from Hotline Miami, however, is that the perspective view of the world has been flipped from a top-down perspective to a side-scroller, offering new and original gameplay elements. As a cyberpunk ninja with a katana on you at all times, you'll mainly be getting melee kills. And most of your enemies have guns and rifles, so to counter that you have the ability to parry bullets, slow time, and also you can dodge roll, which makes you invincible for a couple of frames. You can also pick up and throw knives, bottles and explosives similar to the mechanics of Hotline Miami, but without the ability to use guns yourselves. I guess our fingers are too small or something. It all boils down to a lovely mix where you have to be as fast as possible while also planning your route perfectly. One thing that jumped on me as soon as I started playing this game was the beautiful animations. Retro 16-bit sprites that offer a lot of personality through subtle movements. Visually, it definitely has those retro vibes we all know too well, with the old camcorder filters and this VCR font that I think almost every game on this list has. I see that they were going for a sort of Outrun aesthetic, but it seems a little more Cyberpunk to me. I'm just not sure if they nailed it here.
That's the point! Have you ever Googled the definition of aesthetic, pink ass?
Huh?
A set of principles underlying and guiding the work of a particular artist or artistic movement. So I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that aesthetics such as grunge and art deco are kind of like genres for the eyes. But what many of these genres lack that Outrun and Vaporwave promise is a story. These aesthetics allude to some kind of retro future dystopia. In the case of Outrun, with fast cars and bright colors, pulsing rhythms, and high-octane action. This is the epitome of Katana Zero. Katana Zero is the answer to the questions that these aesthetics ask, peeling back the classic imagery of the Ferrari Testarossa cruising through a cityscape to peek at the dark drama occurring within the walls of smoky nightclubs and abandoned warehouses turned gang hideouts. Katana Zero's most prominent feature besides the action is how everything is absolutely dripping with aesthetics that aren't just there to cash in on popular trends. These characters and settings are so well placed in their aesthetic that they feel unique to their own world, like this style was made specifically to tell the story of Zero as he struggles to survive in a world that seems like it was made to oppress him. This is how aesthetic should be implemented in games. 6 Testarossas out of 7.
Welcome, stranger. I have been looking forward to this moment.
I don't know what it is about these retro synth vapor games, but they have a tendency to be really fucking hard, and Furi is no exception. A game consisting of pretty much just boss fights, and to be honest, what else do you need? The bosses start out as kinda easy, but not really that easy, and eventually turns into the 7 depths of hell covered in the blood of weaker men. Gameplay wise, you constantly have to be on your toes and react to incoming attacks with Bruce Lee type reaction times. I only really struggled on a few of them, but when I first struggled, I was stuck for a while. Especially this fucking guy. I mean, what the hell? How come on! Visually, it has its ups and downs. I like the art style in general, kind of cel-shaded with characters that look like they came from a rejected Overwatch DLC. As you progress through the game, you travel between different worlds by walking around slow as fuck. Some of the worlds are really pretty and interesting, while others are more generic and boring. It does however suck that you have 0 interactions in the worlds you walk through. Overall though, the art style stands out positively and emboldens my enjoyment of the game. The cutscene animations though, they are just, I mean, it's a small team, they can't really... Anyways, let's talk about the soundtrack. Top of the line synthwave by known artists such as Carpenter, Brut, Scattle and The Toxic Avenger, with a handful of others. These tunes really carry the vibe of the game and energize the boss fights to the next level. They also make the boring walking sequences in between boss fights tolerable. By the way, the camera also does these cuts from one stationary camera to another, which changes the angle of where you hold the stick, so suddenly you're holding your stick forward to go backward, and the orientation becomes all fucked, so you have to let go, reset and become confused by the direction, and then start walking again. If you've ever played God of War, you know what I'm talking about. There is a story in the game, it just didn't do it for me. Felt pretty generic and uneventful. Maybe you like it. I don't know. Some of the bosses had interesting dialogue, but that's about it. The gameplay is the main draw here and it's really smooth. As to whether this game is Outrun or Vaporwave, which is probably the biggest question that you're wondering about, I would say it's neither. The visual style is really more of its own thing than any of these genres. Probably like leaning a bit towards Cyberpunk with hints of Outrun, if any. The synthwave soundtrack does, however, put it a bit more in the Outrun camp, at least more so than the Vaporwave camp. And I can't overstate how great this soundtrack is. I even added some of the songs to my synthwave playlist. Hashtag plug, hashtag please follow me on Spotify, I need the clout. 5 Testerosas out of 7. A love letter to GoldenEye and the FPSs of that era. Action-packed shooter where movement is key, as well as grabbing the most high-powered rifles. The physics of the world feels great, as does pretty much all of the guns. You'll send ragdolls flying even with just the silenced pistol. As I am one of the younger millennials, most of the gameplay aspects that inspired this game was before my time, so the nostalgia is more of a projected thing, but the gameplay is still fun and engaging. The game is kind of like a sandbox where you're given a set amount of scenes that you can do your carnage within. You also have the ability to bring in any gun you want by using the sandbox tool. The game is really punishing. If you get close to an enemy and don't immediately kill him, he can easily melt you down in a couple of seconds. But likewise, you can also kill any enemy with a couple of shots. The enemies spawning in as you progress through the level can be kind of annoying, especially in endless mode, where they have a habit of spawning right behind you. It can also be hard to tell if the enemy you just shot is dead or not, since they go flying and end up lying on the floor twitching, so I have a habit of putting in an extra 10 rounds in their spastic corpse. As the state of the game is right now, there isn't that much to do. You can choose between 9 different levels where you start with a weapon and try to get to the finish, as well as endless mode with the additional 6 levels you can play. As far as I can tell, there's no story as of yet, so it's really more of a playground or, as I've said, a sandbox. To me, the levels mostly feel like set pieces from different 80s and 90s action films. I could at least recognize the lobby scene from The Matrix and maybe something from Die Hard. I wasn't born in the 80s, so, I'm not sure. It's definitely a game I will go back to and shoot at some people, but I'm not sure I will go much over the 2 hours of playtime I already have. It feels a bit bare bones, but it's a work in progress, so I can't really trash on it too much. 3.66666 Testerosas out of 7. A fever dream from another dimension. I'm a little stumped at the story, but I think you're supposed to be part of a virtual reality, either as a human player or as a piece of code. Traversing through different aesthetic worlds, you solve puzzles and collect items to progress to the next levels and collect likes. The game has some great scenery and S-tier music. Its creator managed to get some great artists on board, featuring music from Cat System Corp and NXXXXXS, among others. The whole visual style and feel of the worlds are probably what I like the best about the game. You are traveling through a bunch of different vaporwave aesthetics, starting in a very tropical location with dolphins, bright colors and palm trees, and eventually journey to a water world reminiscing of Cyberpunk, as well as a glitchy metropolis which reminds me of music from Hong Kong Express, Telepath and the hypnagogic drift genre. I would say that out of all the games I've played, this is the only one that truly encompasses a authentic vaporwave experience. To me at least, it feels like it respects and understands the aesthetic while also poking fun of it, making it an essential play for anyone who've dreamed about living in a Vaporwave universe. I eventually gave up on the game as the element of backtracking and collecting likes got kinda boring as time went by, and the story didn't really help me to commit to the game either. When I arrived at the hypnagogic drift level, I just felt like I didn't want to start over and get familiar with a brand new area. There were definitely things I enjoyed about the game, but there were parts that were borderline frustrating as well. I might go back however and try and get to the end, if there is one. 4 Testrosas out of 7. So we've got this unknown weeb game that I've barely heard about before. I don't know, man. Some of you guys recommended this in the comments of the last video, so I went over to Steam and checked it out. On the store it had raving reviews, and after playing it, I gotta say, I have no idea what those people were smoking. To be honest, I think I came into this game with the wrong attitude. I'm not sure what I expected, but it was at least something similar to a game. It turns out this is more of a visual novel. You mix and serve drinks in a pub called Valhalla, which finds itself in some kind of cyberpunk city. You also listen to people talk a lot, but few of them have anything interesting to say. The mixing part is a simple minigame that is too straightforward to be enjoyable. You can also buy upgrades for your apartment and choose the playlist for your shift, but that's about it. I gave the game a fair shot of a bit over 1 hour, but this thing did not hook me, and I have other games to play. I'm sorry, weebs. 2 3/4 of a Testarossa out of 7. Ruiner is another title produced by Devolver Digital, the same company that produced both of the Hotline Miami games, as well as Katana Zero and Furi. I guess you could say that these guys have a hard-on for retro cyberpunk aesthetics. The world in this game is amazing. The style and graphics are perfect, sort of like a cyberpunk anime style akin to the likes of Akira and Ghost in the Shell, mixed with a brutal 3D world looking similar to Mass Effect 2's Omega level. Pretty early on, the game pulls you into an open world area, which kind of amazed me. A detailed world with a bunch of cool areas, original characters, and also side quests. It turns out that the area is actually pretty small, which I didn't realize at first, but still, pretty damn cool. The gameplay feels like a mix between Furi and Hotline Miami. Just like both of those games, the camera is mostly from an overhead angle and the action is pretty damn fast. You pick up weapons from the enemies you kill, similarly to Hotline Miami, but you take a lot more damage compared to Hotline's one-shot death. You also have some cool abilities and talent trees that gives you some freedom with your playstyle. Altogether, it's a load of fun. Getting kills feels great. Most of the weapons also felt great. I especially love the shotguns and the melee weapons, but there's something for everyone here. I will absolutely recommend playing this game with a controller. I myself started out with a mouse and keyboard for like the first 2 hours, but soon felt like this game might have been designed with a controller in mind. Since I changed it after I had done the tutorial, there were some painful minutes after making the switch, but since I'm a certified MLG pro gamer, I made it work. I felt like the main story was a bit generic and didn't really pull me all the way in, but the characters are really cool and original. The game also ends at the perfect time, I feel like. I just started to get a bit tired of it right as it ended. 6 out of 7 Testrosas. So I was about finished with this video and ready to record the script, but then I found this very interesting game on Steam, Cloudpunk. The art style, the setting, everything was correct. It was a brand new and very appropriate game to include. So I said fuck it, let's postpone this video a couple more days, and bought that son of a bitch. Now, the game looks really sweet. As a big fan of neon lights in general, I was easily swayed by the aesthetics of this world. It did, however, surprise me a bit that there was a kind of 16-bit look to everything that made me think of Legos every once in a while. But you know, it still felt rather cyberpunky. It's a shame then that the world is really the only thing I like about the game. While this world is beautiful and kinda interesting, the things you do in it are borderline mundane. The gameplay consists of you driving around in a flying car, delivering packages around the world. You can probably feel the excitement as I said that sentence. I feel like this game could have been fun with some police car chases, racing and tailing other cars maybe, but no, the gameplay mostly consists of flying from A to B, walking from B to C, walking back to B, and then flying to D, and you do that same sequence like 30 times. The driving or flying mechanics will be familiar to anyone that's ever played Jak 2. You fly up and down and try to make your way through the lanes of traffic. Unfortunately, there's no Crimson Guard to evade, nor civilians to run over. I guess the driving is kinda entertaining for the first hour, but it gets slow and repetitive real fast, making me go,
if it's not fun, why bother?
But I figured, well, this game can't be that long, and stuck with it. Boy, was I wrong. When it comes to the story, it didn't do much for me. There's like one plotline that was kind of interesting, but other than that, I was constantly resisting the urge to skip dialogue at every turn. There are some almost interesting characters, but none that you really want to talk to for more than 30 seconds. The voice acting is a bit all over the place.
I didn't ask you for money.
I'm sorry, I just don't know if I'm the best person to help you.
Sometimes it's pretty good and I believe the characters exist in the world. Other times it's a bit rough and takes me straight out. The main character makes Garoad feel like the most emotional and charismatic character we've had in the last decade.
Well, good luck. What's your name again?
The game does try to say something about the state of the world, but I'm a bit over it when I hear capitalism bad for the 100th time in the last 30 minutes. Something can also be said about how it tries to be politically woke at every turn, but that's a hornet's nest that I'm not gonna even try to get into. Towards the end of my playthrough, I plugged in my controller instead of using my mouse and keyboard, and it definitely made me enjoy the game a bit more, so I would recommend doing that. This game gets a pie out of 7 Testroses. Alright, to sum it up, if you're a real gamer, get yourself a copy of Katana Zero or Furi. If you're a weeb, go ahead and get that Valhalla game. If you are famous parkour man and acclaimed actor Jesse LaFleur, then Get to the Orange Door is probably for you. If you long for playing shooting games on your N64, then Maximum Action is likely your thing. If you are watching this high as fuck and want to be transported into the next dimension, go ahead and grab Broken Reality. If you want to live inside a cool wallpaper, get Cloudpunk. And if you just want to see cyborgs burn, get Ruiner. I also put all of these games inside this 3-way Venn diagram because it wouldn't be a Pinkass video without one of those diagrams. This is my interpretation at least. Give me a comment or something if you disagree. While looking at this, I realized that there isn't enough Vaporwave games out in the world. So if you are an indie game developer watching this, you know what to do. There is also a possibility that I missed a game or two, but this video is already way too long and I wanna release it before Vaporwave is irrelevant again. Luckily for us, there's also new and interesting retro Cyberpunk games coming out in the future, like The Last Night and Cyberpunk 2077. And you can bet your ass that I'm gonna be making a video about that game after I've played it. But for now, thanks for watching, and
don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit up that notification bell, and I gotta go.